Here are 15 of the best Ask Reddit stories for today. I hope you enjoy and remember to subscribe. It really helps us out. We post new videos every day.
Hotel or motel cleaners, what is the worst/most disturbing thing you've come across while cleaning? Big rubbish bag full of frozen crows? Ravens? Blackbirds anyway. Just sat there in the hallway. Didn't really know what to make of that, so I called head of housekeeping and it became her problem. Very weird indeed. An unsettling amount of blood. With no explanation. This is not a cheap motel, this is $600 minus $1,000 a night boutique designer suites. It was a lot of blood, it was all over the mattress protector, they hid the sheets, and they left their used contact lenses free floating on the bedside table. What are the spookiest audio or video clips on the internet? A doorbell security camera picked up this footage of a suspected kidnapping in South LA in November. The video doesn't really show anything, but the audio is horrifying. There is a person screaming for help for the duration of the video before a car speeds away. I haven't been able to find any newer information about this, and unless there's an update I missed, the identity of the person screaming is still unknown. What was your paranormal experience? We have a 3-year-old, and while putting her to bed in her own room for the first time, she randomly rolled over and told me, "These are my friends, they're nice ghosts." She now has her own little bed in her room. She's not our first child to tell us about these friends. My friend was renting an old house and told me it was haunted. I yelled out, "Ha, there is no way this place is haunted." We immediately heard a bang from the kitchen. I went into the kitchen and noticed a pot that was hanging over the counter was suddenly in the middle of the floor. It fell off its hook and dropped to the floor while missing the 2-foot countertop.
What is a creepy story you haven't told many people? When I was a preteen, I liked to rearrange my room a lot. This one particular time I moved my bed up against my wall facing the door to the hallway, then I put the TV on the adjacent wall but facing at an angle so I could see it head on from my bed. Well, one night I had my light on and was watching a show. I go to turn the light off and lay in my bed. I then noticed on the one wall in the room that was blank, a shadow of a figure with a head and almost a full set of shoulders. It was about halfway up the wall, a little taller than I was at the time. I was just staring at it. I couldn't move. I finally got the courage to get up a little bit and see if anything was casting the shadow, but since I just rearranged the room, there was nothing between my TV and my bed. I put my hand out and it cast a shadow next to the head. I put my head up and it cast a shadow on the wall next to the other shadow too, but that shadow didn't move. I finally got up and turned the light on, then back off and the shadow was gone. Craziest thing ever. I immediately switched my room again and never saw it happen again.
People who did it with a friend's mom. Story. Her daughter dumped me for another guy. I would occasionally go over her place to eat something. Her mother was in her 40s. Very thin but had a very nice face and was always very nice to me. I was 19 and always very complimentary to her for her helping me out. One day a hug goodbye got really long. She wouldn't let go. But she wasn't doing anything else. Just hanging on very tight. Being 19 and because of our relationship, I developed an instant erection. I guess she felt it and nuzzled closer. I started kissing her neck. Pulled her dress up. We went at it for a few hours as the house was empty. She must have been pent up. It didn't set in for a few days. I couldn't tell anyone and never have. Happened a few more times until I had my life in order and it seemed like she was starting to regret cheating on her husband. Would only let me come inside of her. Which blew my mind as I had been constantly pulling out of her daughter for fear of the obvious. It definitely made being dumped by my first girlfriend a lot easier to deal with.
What's the most creepiest thing you've seen that you weren't supposed to see? On my way home, I was looking at a busy street from the subway platform I was on and I saw this guy that everyone knew as a scammer in the neighborhood. He'd throw himself in front of cars for money. But that day he threw himself in front of a real nice car and it struck him real hard. He flew into the 4-way intersection, clearly shocked by the pain, and his head got crushed under a truck passing by that didn't slow down in time. It looked like a watermelon exploding. It's crazy seeing a full-on human who has existed for decades just stop existing in a few seconds. I'm a sales rep and was looking for a meeting room in a rural hospital's pathology department and got lost. I started opening doors to find someone who could help me. When I opened one door, there was a primate of some sort, not human, that was suspended by its wrists that had all of its skin flayed off. Presumably it was a primate cadaver being used for anatomy lessons, but it scared the shit out of me. The skin was removed from the skull, but the eyeballs remained, who was the most dangerous person you've met? My next door neighbor growing up was a big guy with a beard. He had 2 daughters and a really sweet wife. I used to play with his daughters, who were around my age. His wife was always baking and sewing dresses for the girls. One day he came over and asked my mom if she could watch the girls so he could get some stuff done. About an hour later he showed up and told the girls they were all going out for ice cream. He handed my mom $10 and thanked her for babysitting. They piled in his car and drove off. Turns out, he'd found out his wife was having an affair, and while my mom was babysitting his daughters, he shot his wife in the face and killed her. He's currently in prison and the girls were sent to live with their grandparents.
What crazy story do you need to tell? A little while back my roommate was contacted by a wealthy man in the area who wanted to pay her to be his live-in pet for an entire month. She thought that this was the cutest way of saying that it was a sugar daddy, baby arrangement. The girl really wanted the money as well. This allowance would have covered her college tuition for the semester. So she considered the offer for a weekend, and went to the apartment of the wealthy man. Turns out what he actually meant was that she would be given room, board and a very healthy allowance to spend a large portion of her day dressed as a cat. Walking on her hands and knees. Eating out of a bowl. Using a litter box and, yes, sleeping in a little cage at night. Sex wasn't even on the table. He was only interested in having a human cat for a month. She asked him why he want this. He said, I have always dreamt of this since kid. And I think now's the time to fulfill dreams. He knew what he wanted and was very motivated. She accepted the offer because she thought that this is easy money. But when the month ended she said that this was way more difficult.
What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? I lived with 5 guys and I was the only one whose parents weren't millionaires. Not close at all. They never cleaned. About once a month I would deep clean the house, but 2 days later there was garbage and food on the floor. I found out they all told their parents the poor kid made all the messes when one of their moms came by to scream at me. My college roommate's mom gave him effing $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend, and he spent most of what she gave him on Friday, which isn't a part of the weekend. Knew a trust fund girl whose dad gave her the money to start a company. She lost it when she went on vacation for 6 months and forgot she was supposed to pay her employees all the time. She assumed they would not get paid for 6 months and be there when she got back. I quizzed her on this for a few minutes and it was clear she had no idea what a job was. Girl at work told me she hated her dad. I asked why. She said he keeps asking for money since she used his credit card for a Euro trip and left him an 80 grand bill from last year. First day as a librarian in a private school, help a 7-year-old with the printer. He offers to tip me. What do you think is the biggest secret being kept from mankind? That there are people in the world that are richer than the known richest people in the world. If you are that rich, you can afford to be anonymous too. I'm not saying that Jeff Bezos isn't rich. I'm sure he is. I just believe that there are a tiny group of people that have more wealth than Bezos, and that they've used that wealth to hide the fact that they are that wealthy from the world. People that are secretly alive but dead for the public life and vice versa. When I was younger, I read a story in the news of a company that had come up with a bacteria that they would put into your mouth. This bacteria was harmless to people, but ate the bacteria that damages our teeth. It would have destroyed the dental industry. For some reason, I never saw it again. True history. I genuinely believe that there have been things discovered in the past that tell a different story of the past and are intentionally hidden.
What's the scariest true story you've heard or told? My mom was study partners with Ted Bundy. He invited her to go to his apartment to study. A law professor pulled her aside after class and warned her that he was being investigated by the FBI. Shortly after he was arrested but escaped from prison, left behind in his jail cell was my mom's name and address. Without the law professor's warning it could have turned out much differently. I am not sure I remember all the details correctly, but anyway. A guy was cleaning a giant cooking tank at a tuna factory. It was so big that he had to climb all the way in. Someone else didn't check and protocol was broken along the way somewhere. Second guy locked the barrel and turned it on, cooking the guy inside alive. What's a place that seems fine during the day but gets really creepy at night? Service station / rest stops, fine in the day, but I've been in a few 24-hour ones way out in the middle of nowhere at night, where I'm literally the only car in the lot, and all the lowlights are on and the staff is a skeleton crew mostly in the back doing stock. I remember standing in one huge rest stop once and it was just me and this creepy arcade music playing. It felt like I was the only person left alive after some apocalypse. Used to do security work for a company that has stores in malls. Being in a mall late at night by yourself is super creepy. The only noise you hear down the way is the kiddie area rides laughing.
What is the quickest way you've seen someone fuck their life up? A month after graduating. The valedictorian of my HS took his graduation money and savings and drove to California where he bought a speep ton of weed, pills, and cocaine to bring back home and sell. Got caught coming back somewhere in Iowa. Got sentenced to 15 years in prison for felony drug trafficking across state lines, which makes it a federal crime. 18-year-old kid threw a brick through my store's front window and took off with 20,000 of cannabis. Ended up getting caught an hour later. He will probably spend 20 years in prison. My ex admitted to regularly raping a girl starting when she was 8 years old in a phone call with the girl 8 years after it started. He did not know she had contacted the police. And they had gotten a warrant to record phone calls. He got a 45-year prison sentence.
People who grew up filthy rich. What did you think was normal till you learned otherwise? My family was broke as hell. But my mom was and still is a teacher at this really nice private school, which was the only reason my brother and I could attend. Everyone's parents were doctors and lawyers. They had a lot of money. They used to go on school trips and spend hell a lot of money there. You get the idea, but my brother and I were being raised by a single mom who had just relocated. We were living in a trailer park in the middle of nowhere for the cheap-ass rent. We didn't always know when the next meal was coming. One day, during lunch, the kids noticed that all I have is a peanut butter sandwich and a tiny bag of pretzels. One dude says, "Wow, you must really not be hungry." Since I was 6 and just as clueless to any other lifestyle as he was, I just straight up told him we don't have any more food. I had to explain it a couple of times before he realized. Lunch bro sheepishly asks if I would like some of his food. That orange and baggie of Cheetos were the start of a now 20-year-long.
My wife minored in psychology. She's always using all her amateur psychology when we argue. When I fired the pool boy, she said, "Well, you know, you're only firing him because he's so young and good looking, and you feel threatened and insecure, because it reminds you of your own mortality, and you're projecting all these insecurities onto someone else in a very passive-aggressive way, because these feelings are just too traumatic for you to deal with." I said, "Honey, we don't have a pool. A mathematician and an engineer play a game to get laid. At the other end of this room, the game master points out, is a beautiful, young, naked, consenting woman. If you reach her, she will fulfill any and all of your fantasies." The mathematician and engineer both look at each other with excitement. The only rule is that each step you take toward the bed can only be half the size of the last step. The mathematician studies the situation for a moment, frowns, and then remarks, "Oh, forget it. I know how this one ends. I'm going home." The engineer also studies the situation, grins, and then begins walking toward the woman. "Didn't you hear me?" shouts the mathematician. "It's a mathematical certainty you'll never reach her." "Perhaps you're right," he says. "But soon I'll be close enough that for all practical purposes, it won't matter."